So today we are into like maybe 7th or 8th week, and we have been discussing so far about some kind of requirements which we need to understand the project financing in detail. Just to recap what we have been doing so far. So we started our sessions by studying introduction to credit and introduction to project financing. That is the week 1, and week 2 and week 3 basically we discussed about SME banking, SME financing, sources of financing, right, and type of products and those areas. So with that, actually we have covered SME banking area, and followed by the microfinancing definition, application, microfinancing act, so on and so forth. So thereafter we started discussions on some kind of supporting syllabus areas in order to understand project financing in detail. In that route, we discussed about break-even analysis and working capital financing as one of 2 key inputs. In the meantime, actually, we were able to do some past paper questions also to support some kind of areas. But as I was telling you in the beginning, we are trying to do past paper question at the end of the sessions as well. But I wanted to, discuss some past paper questions then and there, so that you can get an idea on some syllabus areas. So any questions that come across during last 4-5 sessions, right? When you're going through whatever we have done so far, have you come across any say difficult areas or further clarifications? Anything that you can raise it up front, so that I can discuss it and start the today's session. Any areas of difficulty you found out when you are going through, or everything is clear? As normally we say that we don't have any questions while we are learning. When come to the exams only, that we do have all the issues. What's a like answer? Any questions or any areas of clarification? We have 10 people with us, so we can wait 1 or 2 minutes until rest of the crowd joining. In the meantime, that we can answer, or we can discuss any areas of complexities on what we have done so far. Okay, so again I'm telling apparently that if you do have any questions, any areas of further clarifications, please let me know, so that we can take it up then and there, or we can take it up after a particular session is over, so that rather than keeping all the questions till the end of the syllabus or the presentation, right? Okay, so today that again we want to discuss very important area, that is financial statement analysis and the ratio analysis. So I have uploaded some or shared some materials, so I'll give you a kind of brief discussion or description on what I have uploaded here, so that you can follow it whenever you have time. So with the presentation that we do a kind of a today's lecture, the presentation is supported by a detailed note on financial statement ratio analysis. You can read through, where you can get more and more details on a particular ratio, computation, and implication kind of thing, application kind of thing. And then I have attached a kind of a ratio analysis which I have extracted from a textbook, which again gives you kind of a particular definition, how to calculate the particular ratio and what exactly the ratio means, right? Let's say current ratio, what is the current ratio, right? So what exactly is for you when you say current ratio? What is going to measure, right? So that's the kind of another attachment that I have given you. In addition, I have done two worked example. One is like, I have taken a kind of organization and their profit and loss account and balance sheet for the particular 3 years. And then I have again given a kind of some analysis where sometimes, examiner would, like to give us kind of a case study sort of thing. And then we are supposed to give an interpretation to the particular ratio. Remember, last week we did a kind of working capital question where, so we were given some ratios, so we were given some trends. We are supposed to comment on that. So then again, I have given you one worked solution and a sort of question and a solution. In addition, in normal class, we also do a kind of classroom exercises. Here, since that we are unable to do it, what I have done here is I have done a kind of homework kind of assignment, ABC Enterprises Private Limited, ABC Private Limited, and also I have given you some answers for that also, right? So basically, what you can do is once you do this today's session or subsequently, you can go through those work solution and see whether you can answer and you can compute and you can see you can compare with the kind of answer. So the more or less the you can familiar with what basically you are intended to do so, because in exam purposes we probably can get a kind of even computations also, like compute some kind of a ratio, interpret and purpose of ratio, right? So those things could be on the card. So it's good that you do these kind of the exercises when you have time on regular basis. So having said that, so we move to the today's presentation. Today's presentation is all about like financial statement analysis and financial ratio analysis. So before moving to the presentation, try to get an idea, right? So what exactly is financial statement? So why it is important, right? And why it is important, especially in the kind of say project financing or in project evaluation, project appraisal. It's like this. Let's say if you have existing customer, so you may be banking with the particular customer is banking with you for about a prolonged period, and then if you do have say financial data for last 3-4 years, then it could be in the form of P&L, balance sheet, cash flow, equity statements, right? And maybe notes to the accounts, right? So some are audited accounts, some are management, some are audited draft, some even actually the constructed based on their information you might have constructed. If you are like credit officer, you know what exactly you can do with the numbers. And then what is the importance? Because now when you give a kind of a loan to a customer, your expectation is basically customer to repay without any problem. Without any problem means no delays, or as per the contractual period, the customer is supposed to pay interest and capital. But when the customer is unable to do so, the problem here is basically we see there is a default, delay, right? Overdue situation. Then it creates a financial risk or credit risk rather. So you need to avoid that side of a situation. So for that, you need a financial evaluation of a customer. If you know the customer's financial performance and the financial position, like profit and loss account and balance sheet, then you know what is customer's profitability, what is customer's liquidity, what is customer's efficiency, what is customer's gearing, like that. So you can find so many information about customers' financial positions and performance. So that gives you a kind of understanding whether the customer can repay a debt or not, easily or difficultly, or the customer could create credit risk in future or not. So that is the most important part when you do have financials or more quantitative support to understand the customer's behavior on repaying the loan. So that's about the existing customer ongoing business. Say what about the customer is a new customer is into the project financing. It's a bit of deviation to the business loans. Then again, it's important because if the customer is existing, then you know the customer is generating adequate income, other income, any trends kind of thing could have a support to the proposed project. Or if not, if the customer is new, if the customer is into the project financing, then you start with the project with some assumptions, and then again you can talk about future performance. Forecasted profit and loss account, forecasted balance sheet, forecasted cash flow statement, like that. So you can have a future view in terms of financial. That is also important. So in going forward, we will undertake another session on financial forecasting or projections. So you may be able to get an idea on that, about how to use the these financial data, ratio, evaluations on projected scenario, on future scenario, on forecasted scenario. So whatever form, financials are very important, right? Because when you are evaluating the customer, you may have all the other information which are not quantitative basis. All are qualitative, right? That when you undertake the non-financial analysis in time to come, maybe next week or so, to understand that all are qualitative about sort, about PESTEL, about BCG, about product life cycle, right? There are so many other things that qualitative measurement can do, but not the quantitative measurement. When you say quantitative measurement, financial come in handy, so will play a key role in evaluating customers' financial performance and financial positions. Hope that you have understood kind of some basic into that. So what is all about this financial statement? What is all about this ratio? Why this is kind of important, right? So just wanted to give a kind of some a briefing on that prior to we move to the presentation. So we start the presentation where give me a minute. Right. Right. Statement and ratio, right? So basically, when you say financial statement or ratio analysis, first we try to understand financial performance and position. When you say financial performance and position in a firm, the position could be created by deducting liabilities from assets. So assets minus liabilities, which is equal to book value of the firm or the stockholders' equity and the equity position. So that is basically the position. So how you are getting that information? That is in the form of balance sheet. So you get a balance sheet, going through the balance sheet, you can get an idea about financial position of a customer, of a business. Then if you know customers' revenues, if you know the expenses, revenue minus expenses would get you net income, performance of a firm. So basically, in a firm, in an organization, two most important concepts we are trying to understand through financial evaluation. That is performance and position. So performance is basically from a profit and loss account. A position is outcome of the balance sheet evaluation. So remember, the next time when I ask about what do you understand by the financial performance of a firm, what do you understand by the financial position of the firm, so you'll be able to answer that kind of a question using the P&L input and the balance sheet input. Friends, if you have any questions, you can ask while we are conducting the presentation. In terms of financial statements, we have 3 or 4 financial statements can be found when we try to evaluate customers' financial positions and the performance. Mainly, balance sheet, income or earning or the P&L, statements, equity, cash flow statements. So it's always good that you know this by name and with one-line description, because sometimes I have seen the examiner has requested us to write a description on these key statements. What is balance sheet? What is income statement? What is equity statement? What is cash flow statement? So good that keep this slide as important slide, and then remember what exact these statements stands for, refer for. Balance sheet shows the financial position of the firm, that is assets, liabilities on a particular date. Remember, it is as per particular date. Let's say 31st March, 31st December, so like that. A particular date, it gives you the detail of assets, liabilities, etc. Then we'll say it's a position as of a date. That's why we call balance sheet or the financial position. Then income or earning statement, it is all about the understanding the operations of a firm in terms of revenue, expenses, profit or loss for a particular period. Earlier, it is for a particular date. This is particular period. During 6 months, during 9 months, during 1 year. So normally it talks about a 1 year period. So it gives you understanding about results of a firm. That is P&L or income statement. Then equity statement, it reconciles the beginning and ending balances of all accounts that appear in stockholders' equity section of the balance sheet. Because this is within the balance sheet, but still it talks about customer equity, customer contribution towards the company, towards the firm, towards the business. It's opening balance, closing balance, retained earnings, other revaluation reserves, particular year's profit. So those are the kind of a component of equity statement. So it is also good to see, in simply say, if the firm is growing well, so we can see the equity is growing, net worth is growing. But in vice versa, you can see that some companies are doing very well and they keep on recording losses, and then you see the net worth is eroding. It's not a good sign. So when you have the equity statement, so you can see, compare year on year. So what happened to the equity? What happened to the retaining earnings? What happened to the annual profits? So gives you an understanding. It's a good company, a sound company, growing company in terms of equity, in terms of equity contribution by the sponsors. Lastly, cash flow statement. When you say cash flow statements, it's more vital, more informative in terms of bankers, in terms of project financing, in terms of loan repayment. We are very much interested to see whether the company is generating adequate cash. When you say adequate cash, it is to meet day-to-day operational expenses, it is to meet financing expenses, it is to meet investment expenses, right? Because a firm has to do so many things in their day-to-day businesses. So they need to, meet the obligation, they have with the bankers or financing partners, and they have to look after their stakeholders, and they have to invest in terms of asset to grow the business, and most importantly, they have to support the working capital of the firm. So everything is depend on the cash flow soundness of the firm. That's why we sometimes say, yes, the company making big profits, good profits, but our intention, our focus is to see what is the cash position, cash flow position. So the statement of cash flows basically talks about cash inflows and outflows from operating, financing, and investment activities, right? So you need to understand whether company is making a surplus on operating, investing, and financing activities, financing, right? Hope you understand this. I took a kind of a time on this because sometimes we have seen some, the questions are coming in very simpler way, just to list out what are the financial statements and give a brief description on financial statement. So this slide again, very important slide for exam purposes as well. So any questions so far? Any questions? Okay, we will move on. Then when you say financial statement analysis, again, you can do in various ways. Sometimes we call them as financial statement tools, right? What are the methods? One method could be comparisons across time. It's like, say you have year 1, year 2, year 3, right? And you try to compare year and year over time, across time. So why basically this is needed? Let's say now when you meet a customer and you ask some questions, and then it could be like, what is your turnover? Say 5 billion turnover business. So you sometimes say very good business. So you're making a big profit. So big revenue, big turnover. Am I correct? Am I correct in that judgment? Probably not. One thing could be 5 billion turnover. Yes, it's good. In terms of absolutely, yes, it's good. But we need to compare, or we need to see it in relatively also. What about other players in the market in a particular industry? What is the average turnover in particular industry? Say it's 10 billion, and then 5 billion is not the great thing, but it's a 1 billion average. 5 billion is great. You're getting my point? So always you try to speaks about numbers in relative form. Otherwise, percentage nothing. Example, when you say I have done 200% growth in my turnover, somebody, the other would come say, I did only 20% growth. We say 200% is very much, great initiative and all those things, claps and all that. But when you say 200%, when you say absolute number, so 10 million to 200% is 30 million. But still he made only 30 million revenue. But when you say 20% guy, it's 100 million turnover goes to 120 million. In terms of profitability, in terms of cash flows, 120 million is most important because they make more money than this 30 billion company. But when you say percentages, 200 to 20%, I'm going with the 200%. Am I right in that judgment? No. So you need to make sure that you take the things, not only absolute perspective. Always you try to relatively compare with some other parameter, some other data. Follow the trend. That's what generally you have to do. When you say across the time, is one of the tools that we can use to evaluate financial statement. So that is basically across time, in the sense, say you have year 1, year 2, year 3. You try to compare year 1 turnover, year 2 turnover, year 3 turnover. So then it gives some understanding. 100 billion, 120, 130, absolute perspective. You see a growth. So compared to last year, you have done 20% growth. Compared to previous year, you have done 30% growth. So like that, then you know where that you are started from. Now what's your position? So that is at number 1, comparison, or maybe evaluation tool. Then you have comparison within the industry. That is also important. As I was telling in the upfront a little while ago, you have to see whether at which level you are in the industry. When you say I reported 5 billion turnover, you have to see what about the industry average? What about the other players? What is the competitor? I mean, next competitor making, recording, reporting. Very important. So then, you know, you get a good understanding. Example, like say current ratio. In a particular industry, the current ratio is 2 times on average. But particular borrower, prospective borrower you are discussing is recording a kind of a current ratio of say 1 times. What do you mean? It's less than the industry benchmark. It's not a good situation. You need to understand, because it is not up to the standard of the other firms. But when you say industry average is 2, but you are 2.2, 2.3, so you are par with the industry. So you are okay. But when you say 3, 3.2, you are better than the industry. So that is the way. Comparison within the industry. Take agricultural, take paddy, take garment, take tea, and then you see what is the trend within the particular industry. And then you need to understand the trends. Third one, within the financial statement, we call common size financial statement, where you try to understand the trends for the financial statements, taking within the financial statement. When you go further, you understand it better. When you say within, you try to make a base within the financial statement. Let's say you take sales as 100, and you see all the other expenses, all the other items in the P&L as a percentage of sales. When you say 100 is the sales, then 85 is the GP, 45 is the NP, sorry, OP, 15 is the NP, financial expenses is this much of sales. Like, so it's like, you know, vertically, you are trying to understand within. And then you have to go to the next year. Say this year GP is 85%, and next year is 82% or 87%. So it's easy to compare. So financial expenses, say point something as of sales. So when come to this year, it's 0.3% with a marginal increase. Then you think about why it has been increased. What is the market increase? So then that may be part of that. Oh, market has decreased, but you have increased. Then there are kind of some structuring issue on your financing, short term to long term to match into some kind of thing. You need to revisit your financing strategy. So there are 3 methods across time, within industry, within financial statements. There are 3 key tools that you can use to analyze, evaluate financial statement. Last one is basically ratio analysis, which are trying to start in little while. This is example for the common size statement. Here you have say 2009, 2010 numbers. What I have done is I have taken sales as 100 and all the other components in a profit and loss account taken as percentage. Cost of goods sold, selling and distribution, fixed expenses, right? So based on that, you have done a kind of percentaging, and then it's easy to understand each item. And if you take example, say GP, as of 2009, it is 18.17. 2010, 16.67. What it means? GP has come down 18 to 16. Then you think about what actually happened. Why the GP has come down? Could be efficiency issue, could be cost of sales has gone up, then the stocks levels, or maybe raw material sort of thing, or maybe new labors, or I had to hire some fresh labors. That may be the issue. So easy to understand. So rather than you just compare with the outside, you first start with common size income, common size balance sheet within the financial statement. You get a better view, better idea. Okay. Similarly, I have actually enlarged it because we can use this for some future computations. That's why I have enlarged it, so you can take the figures and do the computation. Again, we can do the common size balance sheet also. Similar like a P&L, we do a common size balance sheet. There, what you have done is you take asset as 100 and the equity liability as 100, and then as a percentage of asset and as percentage of equity, you have calculated all other components. Then you know this is a common size. 100 is the base, and as a percentage of that, I have recomputed all my asset components and the liability components. Hope you have got that. When you have these in numbers, it is easy to do further computations. Right. Any questions? Any questions so far? Patum, any questions? Jayani? Matthias, you are asking slides uploaded to Classroom. Yes, it is there, but hope coordinator has also answered that. I have uploaded. There are 7 attachments including this presentation. I have briefed what those are as well. How do banks obtain industry standards? Very quick question, Darshan. It's like this. Generally, banks inside deploy some industry analysis, and then they do like selected industries analysis, and they give away the numbers. That's number 1. Number 2, banks can work with some trade organization, industry chambers, and then again you can get kind of some trends. Thirdly, if you are into banking, let's say for about last 10 to 15 years, probably you have very good base on these type of customers and industries. Say you are into SME, so you have some paddy customers, you have some gem customers, you have some tea customers. Then when you are like evaluating some financial data with those customers, and after 2-3 business cycles, you have a good database about their profitability margin, GP margin, and terms of trade. And because now you have a very uniform data structure, because you have so many numbers of tea manufacturers, or maybe planters, or maybe tea factories, paddy millers. That is also a kind of a good database extracted, and you can have some kind of a ratios. So going forward, you can recalibrate that with the presenting numbers. That is also another input. In these 2 or 3 ways, you can get some industry data. In addition, we have some norms. Like last week, we discussed about terms of trade, like stocks to debtor to creditor, like 3:1, and current ratio is 1.5 times. Quick ratio is more than 1, and like debt service cover ratio is like 1.5 times. Interest cover is more than 2 times. Those are some of the norms that we have been using as bankers. That is, again, it's good that you can compare those with the particular credit proposal or credit proposition. As I was telling you last time, may not always correct, because it depends on industry to industry. That's why I was telling you. So you need to drill down, scan a particular industry, and see what are the trends within the industry. Say in a paddy, say average stock period is say 6 months. But when you say, in my learnings, I say stock should be not more than 3 months, then there is a contradiction. With general 3, but when come to paddy, so within, it's like 6 months. Then you need to compare with 6 month industry average of stock days. If somebody is making 9 month stock, then you need to question. Somebody is making 3 month stock, then you need to question, because it could be a different variety of paddy, or maybe buying and selling something, not manufacturing or not processing price. Hope I clarified your question, Tarshan. What about others? Any questions? Any thoughts? Okay, thanks for your questions. And still you can, take up any questions, so that then and there we try to answer and get internalized whatever the learnings. Then we move to the next part, that is financial ratio. Actually, this is the 4th tool, I must say. So we learn about horizontal analysis, we learn about vertical analysis, or like common size, and we talk about trend or industry analysis, and the last one could be ratio analysis. So those are the 4 tools we can use to evaluate financial statements. So this is again very important tool, where ratios. Actually, when you undertake ratios, the previous 3 tools or methods are heavily useful. That is, ratios used for both internal as well as external. So internally, the ratios are used for planning, or maybe your strategy setting, or evaluation of management activities, management KPIs internally. Example, when you say you need to maintain a unit branch NPL of this much, it could be something year-end KPI, or making impairment less than this percentage or this amount is a management KPI. It is internal. And external also, these ratios could be useful, like credit granting, credit provisioning. Let's say when we want to give credit to a particular customer, borrower, we can use ratio analysis, outcome of the ratios, to gauge the customer's suitability for the particular credit. Let's say the customer debt service cover ratio is 1.7. So it gives you a good understanding, good indication the customer could service the loan in future without a bigger problems. But let's say the customer's debt service cover ratio is less than 1. It gives you some kind of a issue, and where the customer cannot service the particular debt. Similarly, investment decisions, external users based on these ratios. It's about their market capitalization, PE ratio, price earning ratio, earnings per share, right? Those are taken by investors for their decisions about a firm, if they want to invest in the particular firm. So like that, these ratios could be internally used as well as externally used. When you are trying to understand financial ratios, you can categorize it further into sub areas, classifications for better understanding. How we are going to subdivide them is basically in terms of liquidity, in terms of efficiency, in terms of leverage and coverage, profitability, market valuation. So like that, you can, subcategorize. When you say subcategorize, it is easy. So what are the liquidity ratio? What are the efficiency ratio? What are the leverage and coverage ratio? And as I was telling you at the front, I have shared you kind of some ratios under different categories, and it gives you what exactly liquidity. Why do you want liquidity? Why it is important liquidity for a firm? So if you take in today's context, banks are very much worried about what a liquidity these days, but not the liquidity crisis. We have excess liquidity because liquidity ratio is you need to maintain at 20%. So last years or the previous years, we have an issue in maintain the liquidity at 20. It may be fall a little shorter than 20, then so we need to pay a kind of a premium, whatever penalty. But we never heard about a liquidity surplus. But recently we are hearing that you can't keep the liquidity, excess liquidity beyond 40%. Now we need to give anyhow, we need to give credit to the customer because you can't keep the money in your bank with excess liquidity. So excess or the deficit is not good. So you maintain the liquidity at the right level. In terms of firm also, it's correct. Because when you say excess liquidity, what it says? Because you have excess cash. Excess kind of current assets convertible to cash. You are not getting anything. If you have money in your pocket, invested in a business, invested in somewhere, you're not getting nothing. But similarly, if you don't have liquidity, like when creditors ask, or when you want to, purchase some assets, if you don't have money, then you're short of liquidity. Like you don't have money in your purse. You want to buy, but you don't have any, petty cash. You understand? So again, very important. So each ratio is like that because there are bottom and ceiling. You need to manage that. So need to manage. First, you need to understand. So how we are going to do that is basically, since that we have given the kind of illustration of common size balance sheet and common size P&L, we try to use the P&L and balance sheet to understand further a kind of a ratios falling under each section, subcategory. Right? I think I have done the worked examples here. So we as a team, since it's online, we try to do it simultaneously. But I think I have given you some homework also with worked examples. So don't look at the answers. First, try to compute as much as ratios falling under this using my question. And then compare your answers with the worked solutions or the solutions I have shared. Okay. So liquidity, it basically refers as the speed with which an asset can be converted to cash. So how soon you can convert your current assets into cash? Then you say liquid. So you have some stocks, but stocks could be raw material to WIP to finished goods. But finished goods could be easily converted to cash in a shorter period, because if the market demand is adequate, you can do that. Or maybe debtors to some extent. But debtors beyond 90 days, beyond 60 days, may not be very much easy to convert into a cash. Similarly, raw material or WIP, work in progress, may not be easily convertible to cash. Then you need to maintain a proper level of cash, a proper level of fixed goods, a proper level of debtors in order to manage your firm's liquidity. That is what all about liquidity in terms of a business. In other terms, it says it is the ability of a firm to meet the short-term liabilities, current obligation. You need to have cash. You need to have convertible debtor and stock to meet what? Short-term loans, overdraft, creditors. So if you can't do that, then you say it's not liquid. So sometimes the company is illiquid. Company doesn't have a adequate liquidity. Why we are telling? Because they can't meet the current obligation. So they can't meet the creditor requirement. They can't meet the banker's short-term liabilities. So some issue, right? So basically, you need to understand these concepts very clearly, because there are some questions like, what do you understand by the liquidity ratio? Describe, or write a short note on liquidity. And then they will ask about a computation of current quick cash, like that. So there are so many ratios coming under that, but we are trying to, the main ratios are current and quick ratio. Cash ratio is also important, but not very much in practice. But current ratio and quick ratio are very important tool, important ratios, right? So this is what basically the computation or the formula. Current assets is equal to, current ratio is equal to current assets divided by current liability. Because I have given the answers here, but because what I have done is I have taken the numbers from the P&L balance sheet in the presentation itself and substitute here to get a understanding. But in real life, in practical scenario, what we are trying to do is, what we are doing is, so we do it in the classroom, so and then we look at the answer. But here I have done the the calculation for you as well, right? So we have a question. No, any questions on this computation? I think it's not a big deal, just to substitute, and you need to go to the current assets of the firm, and you need to find the current liability, and assets divided by liability give you the current ratio. Then in this example, as per the 2010 firm EPI, then current ratio is, current assets is 1290 divided by 540 is the current liability. So 1290 divided by 540 is 2.39. Then quick ratio. Quick ratio is computed using current assets minus inventories divided by current liabilities. So you know the current assets 1290, but inventories for 2010 is 838. So the quick ratio is 1290 minus 838 divided by 540, 0.84. So basically, if you go by the norm, now if you go by the current ratio of norm is 1.5, but here 2.39. We say as per the norm it's 1.5, but the particular company recorded current ratio for 2010 is 2.39. So hence the company is doing well in terms of current ratio. But when it comes to the quick ratio, standard is 1, but this company is recording only 8.4, 0.8.4. So apparently it's not a good situation. but you can't say this is bad. But you have to see what is 2009, what is 2008, whether we have an increasing trend, deteriorating trend, and what about industry average of this type of business. Then only you can comment this is good or bad. But if you think current quick ratio alone, absolutely this is not good situation because it is less than 1. Any questions? Because interpretations are very important. Because sometimes, as I was telling you, the examiner would ask you to describe about liquidity, compute particular ratios, and then interpret. Like last week, we did a kind of a question where we are requested to interpret about financial position of the particular firm or working capital position. Then you need to know to compute and describe as well. Any questions? No questions? If examiner gives that kind of a question, you are able to answer. Pratum, Nilushika, Lashani, Jani, all are okay? Okay, let's move on. If you do have any questions, yes, please raise, and then we can, discuss and further move on. Cash ratio, as I was telling you, not very much in practice, but you can, compute cash divided by current liabilities. So in this case, cash is 50, current liabilities 540. It's this type of answer. Basically, it tells you what is the availability of cash to service the current liability. It basically tells if it's a higher number, it's good because you have excess cash. But in practical, we are not, maintain that much of cash, either bank or in hand, because it means is the cost of capital is high. Because if you keep the cash in your pocket, in your wallet, in your whatever, without putting any investment, without investing in current assets, so it does not generate adequate return. The right businessman is try to manage these components. Like last week we discussed about the managing working capital is all about that. That's why we say just in time practices are very good, because you are not keeping higher investment on current assets, right? So as soon as you get the order, then you manufacture like that. So lesser investment in working capital, which is in terms of profitability, in terms of liquidity also. You need to maintain a kind of a balance out of that, because if sudden things could happen, then there may be liquidity issues, will have impact on profitability. So you need to have kind of a proper supplier buyer arrangements if you are into the GIT concepts, right? So these are the 3 ratios that generally we try to learn, right? Out of the 3, 2 are very important and critical, like current and quick. So you may be asked to compute and interpret those ratios in exam situation. Then we move to efficiency ratios. Efficiency ratios, again, very important. To have, I think last week also we discussed the efficiency ratio. Efficiency ratios like working capital related items and fixed capital related items. Working capital related items are like stock, debtor, creditor. Remember, we were doing some examples to arrive to understand stock turnover date period, debtors turnover period, creditors turnover period, or in terms of stock turnover ratio, debtors turnover ratio, creditors turnover ratio. So those to see whether how efficient a firm is using the working capital items. Similarly, you can see how well a business is use the company assets. Like assets is supporting to generate turnover. So how that, like example, let's say asset turnover ratio is basically turnover to assets like that. Example, in a manufacturing firm, what do you think? In manufacturing firm, you have higher assets in the firm. Why? Because you have land, building to machinery and all that. Where you try to generate turnover, which may not be very much attractive. That's a no, because in a manufacturing firm, you need to have higher number of assets, high investments in assets. But what about trading organization? A trading organization, you don't have that much of assets, because you basically you try to purchase and sell like that. Yes, current assets are there, but I mean to talk about the fixed assets here, because fixed assets are basically kind of long term in nature. Very less fixed assets in terms of trading organizations, right? But manufacturing organization, yes, we do have higher investment in fixed assets. So again, we need to check the efficiency of fixed assets also, whether they are adequately supporting to generate turnover. In terms of current assets, we are trying to see how well they are turning in order to make a efficient working capital situation. So those are the 5 ratios that we can compute and we can understand, we can discuss under the efficiency ratios. I think last week also we discussed about 3 ratios and we did some computations, but here again we have another example and then we see what are the answers. So if you do have any questions, you can discuss while I am describing. So inventory accounts and average collection ratio, or the creditors period or creditors ratio. Fixed assets and total asset is the other two. That is all about total assets. This is about current assets. And this is basically important in order to understand how well a firm is utilizing its assets. It could be short-term assets like working capital assets, or it could be like fixed assets like long-term assets. So inventory turnover is cost of goods sold divided by inventory. That's the inventory turnover. If you go by the 2010, inventory turnover is 3.88. Now, you may be having a question, what is the inventory turnover and what is the inventory turnover or maybe inventory period? I mean, small change, right? When you say inventory turnover, what is all about is how many times that inventories are turning around. So 3.88 times, right? So if you further understand the number of days, what is basically, it is 365 divided by 3.88, because it is like you take year, number of days in year divided by inventory turnover. So it's like then 80 days or 90 days, or maybe in this something 90 days example. So what it says, so the stocks are residing for 3 months. So just treat the equation here. Here basically how we arrive the turnover, inventory turnover, it's basically cost of sales divided by the inventory. If you upside down, inventory divided by cost of sales into 365, what it says, it is a number of days that you are keeping the stocks. Hope you have got that, because last time actually we were computing number of days. When you compute in number of days, every time it's average creditors or stocks or debtors as the F, and then divided by cost of sales or sales into 365. But if you want to make it as a ratio, how you do is, say, cost of sales divided by inventory, sales divided by debtors. Hope you have got that, because in that way that you can compute all those three ratios. And that's what here, inventory divided, sorry, cost of goods sold divided by the inventory. This is 3.88. So when you take 365 and divide by 3.88, then you get the number of days, right? And then account receivable, that is the debtors turnover, that is credit sales, account receivables. If you don't have the credit sales, you just get the sales like last time we did it and divided by the account receivable or debtors, 9.70. Now we want to make it to number of days, then 365 divided by 9.7. There is something 42 days. You can express its number of days as well as you can express it number of times. Understand here the collection period. So basically, like what we have done last time, instead of account collection or debtors ratio, creditors ratio, they have computed average collection period, like what we have done last week. Then account receivable comes top, divide by sales into 360. So that's why it comes 37.11. Then how do you want to make it a ratio now? If you have a number of days, 37 or 40 or whatever, if you want to make a ratio, then take 360 divided by this. Then it takes a ratio. Simple as that. Like when you say turnover, stock turnover, creditors turnover, debtors turnover, then it is times or number of turns. Then you get cost of sales, sales divided by creditors or debtors or the stocks. Then you get the answer of ratio, how many times. But if you want to make a period, number of days, then you upside down the equation where you say average stocks, average debtors, average creditors divided by cost of sales or sales into 365. 360. Any questions? We did a kind of a question last time also, but I just wanted to repeat it because this is a bit of important area. So that's why I wanted to take it up separately, working capital, because we see a lot of questions has been asked during the examination, and then I wanted to make them a further understanding because it's a part of the financial statement analysis. Any questions? You can raise any question. Diane, Jani, any issues, questions, any thoughts you want to share with others, any feedback? Yeah, apparently you are getting it perfectly. Let's see if any kind of a difficulty, please let me know. So we will carry on. Then once you computed the working capital related ratios, then you can think about a fixed capital related data. That is fixed asset turnover and total asset turnover. So when you say fixed asset, it could be a sales about fixed assets, net fixed assets, because we are taking depreciated assets here. So it basically try to understand how well you are using the company's fixed assets into generation of sales. Sales divided by net fixed assets. Sales is 3,900 and net fixed assets is 360. So it's 10 times. So possibly we are running this company with less fixed assets. More or less, this could be a trading type of organization. But when you see a higher number of, or maybe something mixed, I mean, say, if you say higher amount of fixed assets, there are maybe say 1,000 downline here, 3,900 divided by 1,000 is 3.9. So more or less manufacturing, because you have a heavy investment on fixed assets, right? So that could be like, you know, a kind of understanding that we can get, because in order to see further on this, you need to see what exactly the organization is, what type of business, what type of assets they are maintaining, what type of processes, complexities. So like that, so you need to further understand all those things, you know, prior to come to conclusions. But in general, so this basically tells you how well you are using the fixed assets of a company to generate sales or turnover. Then the total assets, that is something about, it includes both current and fixed assets, right? So it tells you again in terms of assets, the total assets, how well you are doing, how we are doing in terms of generating sales, generating turnover. So sales divided by total assets. Sales here 3,900 as per the P&L, and the total assets are 1,650. So 2.36. Obviously there is a deduction because earlier it is only net fixed assets. Fine. Any questions before moving to leverage? Any questions? So far we have discussing about liquidity and the efficiency, which are very important tools, very important ratios in terms of you know, evaluating customers' financial positions and performance. Any questions? Okay. Now into the leverage, or we can say gearing sometimes. Basically, this talks about how much indebted, what is the portion of the debt, right? Generally, before moving to this, I'll give you a kind of some briefing. So every firm can be run by owner's equity. So where you are not supposed to get any borrowings from outside, and you try to, you know, use your internal funds to run the company. But you can't do this a prolonged period. You need to, you know, go for some debt financing, and then when you are trying to do this, but there should be a limit, right? So if you go for the higher debt component, it is not good. Why? When you highly indebted means you need to pay off interest, which is absorb part of your profits, and also cash flow where you need to pay the capital. So you need to make a balance of, you know, debt and equity. So that basically gives you understanding how you are running your financial structure. You know, net worth to debt, short term to long term, mix, important concepts. So in order to understand that, so we basically use this gearing ratio, leverage in terms of ratio, right? So we are trying to understand several ratios: total debt to equity, long-term debt to equity, total debt ratio, right? I mean debt to sales. That's about leveraging. So like that, so you can, you know, compute several ratios, and which gives you different understanding, different meanings. So based on the understanding, based on the data, that you can come to kind of a conclusion, right? So what are the real meaning of the particular ratio and particular situation, right? But if it is into project financing, long-term financing, yeah, when the debt equity is, we prefer long-term debt to equity. But it's a business like trading, it's good to know about total debt to equity as well, because a higher short-term loan component could be in a trading organization in a short-term perspective. But in long-term scenario, if a project financing is concerned, it's good that you understand long-term debt to equity, because it's important ratio that we can arrive to. So total debt, long-term debt, debt to equity, long-term debt. There are several ratios as I was mentioning you. So total debt is basically total liabilities to total assets. It's something leveraging. How much, you have liabilities as against your assets. Here total liability is 964 as against total assets of 1650. Because it basically tells you have some assets. Assets could be funded through equity and liability. Maybe short term to long term. That's how the assets are being financed, right? So when you say your liabilities are almost so other way, your assets are 100% financed by liability, what it means, we have not infused any capital. That is not good. But when you say liabilities total sales are zero, what it means? You have funded everything through equity. That is also not good, because you own money at the expense. Ideally, you need to have, like we say, 50-50, 60-40. So like that. So in this scenario, what happens? What it tells you is, out of assets, 60% is financed by liabilities. 40% is the equity, in other way around. 58 is basically out of total assets being funded by the liabilities. Why I am telling is because assets is equal to, generally, assets is basically liabilities and equity. A is L plus E. When you say A is 100, L is 58, E is 42. In other words, that's what we have done, right? L divided by A is 58% is asset of 100% is funded by liability of 58 and equity of 42. It's a good mix. What I was telling you is asset is 100, is equity is 0, and then liability is 100, not good. Asset is 100, liability is 0, equity is 100, not good, because you have, I mean, in a risk perspective, yes, it's very good, because as a banker, I'm very much preferred, because no debt, no risk. But in terms of sponsor, borrower, it's not good, because everything, is equity into the business, because you can take some debt. So better you have some kind of balance here. Maybe 60%, 40%, or maybe lesser than that, right? Total debt to ratio. Then long-term debt is long-term debt to total assets. That is also correct. Here, total liabilities to total assets, then long-term debt to total assets. That is also out of this liability. Out of this liability, we have long-term debt, we have short-term debt, we have some current liability, other liabilities also. But if you want to see the component, long-term debt, assets, that's also fine. It basically tells you how much of your assets in the business is funded by long-term debt, which is very conservative, less aggressive financing strategy. Because rather than you using the short-term debt to fund even your working capital assets, when you say assets is both long-term and short-term, right? You use long-term debt to finance this. That is not always advisable. But when you say long-term assets, long-term debt or equity is used to finance your fixed assets and current assets, is very conservative. But ideally, it is not the way. Ideally, we say long-term assets to be funded through long-term liabilities, long-term debt, current assets to be financed by the short-term liabilities, current liabilities. Hope we have got it. Right. Then debt to equity is liability to equity now. Earlier we talked about liability to asset and we talk about liability to equity. When you say liability, it could be long-term and short-term as well. Long-term and short-term as well, right? But as I was telling, there may be so many equations that you can generate. But what you exactly interested is the importance here, right? When you say debt to equity, it's total liabilities to total equity. When you say total liabilities, it includes both current and long-term liability, right? Or sometimes we can say total debt to total equity. That again, debt to equity is correct. Where total debt is long-term debt and short-term debt both. Long-term debt, short-term debt, together divided by total equity, give you the debt to equity. And this one is long-term debt to equity, where you try to understand what is exactly the long-term debt component to equity. Is 60 to 61.9. This is I exactly telling a little while before, where if you are into the project financing, we talk about longer term investments, right? You get the money in return after a considerable period, maybe 7 years, 10 years, 12 years, like that. So long-term debt to total equity will be the kind of answer. Hence that you need to understand long-term debt and what's the like component and what is the relationship between the equity. So when you say long-term debt, it is for a project financing, longer term of investments. So that again, generally we say long-term debt to equity, we have a norm of 60-40. So it is something 70-30, it's not advisable. For 50-50, it's good for the bank. But 60-40 is the norm for debt to equity. When you say debt to equity, it automatically refer long-term debt to equity. That's why I was telling you that there may be so many things that you can compute. Say total debt to equity, long-term debt to equity, short-term debt to equity, right? Like earlier we talked about liabilities to equity, total liabilities to assets, right? So you can, compute so many ratios and it gives different meanings. But when you say total liabilities to assets, that's about, leveraging. How much liabilities are being used to fund the assets. And when you say long-term debt to equity, what's like, the net worth concentration with the debt. Because whether the company or rather it's a gearing, company's adequate net worth to meet the debts they have obtained. This is not all about coverage, right? Repayment. This is about a position, the balance sheet item. How much indebted I am. Say if I go to a kind of to take a personal loan, if I am like my debt ratio is something 70 or 80, obviously they reject you. They say you can't go beyond 60% of debt. Your total deductions could be less than 60. What it means? They also talk about 60-40 something, because you can't, like, you need to at least 40% out of your disposable income to meet day-to-day expenditures. That's what they say, right? 60% is all your deduction, statutory and all that, and debt and all that. So like that. So it's important ratio, because this gives you an understanding how much indebted you are, how the firm is indebted in terms of debt to equity, in terms of debt to assets. Hope you understood and basically, these are the kind of ratios. The most important ratio is long-term debt, and norm is 60%. Right? Other ratios are important, but not very much frequently being used, but good to have and good to know those things as well. Right? Any questions? Okay. Then we move to coverage. Coverage again important. There are two ratios, that is interest cover and debt service cover ratio. Interest cover is basically talks about the firm's ability to service the interest. And debt service cover is talks about firm's ability to service both debt and interest. DSCR and interest cover. So interest cover is something, as a norm we say it should be about 2 times, and debt service cover should be more than 1.5 times. That's what we generally think about. So how we are going to compute the interest cover is basically earning before interest and tax, like maybe operating profit or before interest and tax, and divide by interest. Say if you have a firm, you have sales, you have GP, OP, and NP. So take operating profit and divide by interest and see what is the times interest earned, interest cover. If it is more than 2, we say it's good. What it says is, because we are generating a profit twice your interest payment. That's simple. Say you in a year you have interest component of 100 million and your operating profit is say 300 million. So you are generating 3 times profit to service your interest. But what happens if you generating only operating profit of 100 and interest component is 100, then 100 divided by 100 is 1. There is 1 time. That's not good. Or sometimes you are not even generate adequate profit even to service the interest. So interest component is 100, but you are generating operating profit of 80.8. So it means that even you can't think about paying interest. Keep aside the capital, forget the capital, but interest you can't pay. So higher the operating profits is good, because then you can service the interest without any problem. This is what the interest cover in our terms, or maybe time interest earned. Profit divided by interest. Profit before interest and tax divided by interest. Fine. And here actually debt service cover, because here that we have not done a kind of solution. I will show this in the board, because we don't have answer, or I kind of we don't have kind of a data to support that. So I will show you the equation. In the meantime, that we have got a kind of a question: how to interpret the results of the ratio, and how do we check if it is viable for the project? Very good. So again, Mathis, what happened is, in terms of project financing, whatever we are talking here may not be relevant if the sponsor does not have a existing business. If the sponsor is having existing business, then we can evaluate his existing business and his capacity and all that using these ratios that we have been talking so far. When we go to a project, then we don't have the historical data, but we can have data for the future. So you have projected P&L, projected balance sheet, projected cash flows. When you have this projected data, then the interpretation is similar. Say in a projected scenario, current ratio should be beyond 1.5. Quick ratio should be beyond 1. Terms of trade should be like this. Debt to equity is 60 or so. Interest cover should be like this. Debt service cover should be like this, because all about future. All about future means all about project. Say a project, only thing is it's in future. Say if the future project is not generating adequate interest income, adequate profit to service the future interest, that is a future projected interest cover. Should be obviously 2 times. If they are not generating, it tells you they can't pay off. DSCR again, let's say 1.5 or more. Again, they can't if it's not generating that. Yes, some are standard, some are not. Let's say current ratio 1.5, quick ratio 1, and terms of trend like 3:1, some standard. So interest cover 2 times or more, debt service cover 1.5 are standard, but could be changed, as I was telling you, because now when you say industry to industry, current ratio could differ, but it could give you kind of some benchmark, at least to think about. Right? Let's say if you don't have anything, you can't do anything. You can't interpret. You can't say yes or no. Example, say, suppose that you are planning to finance a 3-star hotel. But if you don't have any data relating to a cost per room, for example, then the customer come and tell, I want to have a 100-room 3-star hotel, land, building, and all the amenities and all that. So the roughly the cost is something, we say for the land is 100 and the rest of the building say 200, 300 million or so. But you need to understand at least, say, per room cost, when it comes with all furnished level, say 4 million, roughly. So 400 into 100 into 4, it should be 400 million, something, a kind of at least, it's a norm now. The customer coming in, I will construct in 200 million. So there may not be a possibility. It's a 5-star. So 10 million or 15 million per room. So it's coming for 100 room, it's 1.5 billion at least. Then if customer is coming and telling 1 billion, so probably you can re-question. So like that, there are some norms, standards, but you can't, have those standards eternally or inconsistent in all industries. It could differ, but it's something, a point that you can think about. The standards I was talking about are some, a general or maybe accepted norms, accepted standards, but you can work on that. Am I clear to Matthias? Terms times interest earned equals to ISCR. I am exactly know what is ISCR stands for. Could be, yes, interest service cover. Yes, correct. You are correct. Yeah, I didn't get the first time. ISCR, if say interest service cover like debt service cover, yes. We called, in international language, it talks about TIE, but in Sri Lankan perspective, we talk about interest cover. And when you say the next one, that the debt service cover, it is not only interest, but also debt, the capital also to be service. That is debt service cover. When it comes to the debt service cover, what you need to know is, let's say, operating profit or profit before interest and depreciation divided by, now not only interest, but capital as well. Now earlier, you talk about OP divided by interest. So you get a higher figure, say 2 times, 3 times. But when you have another one in a denominator, that's about capital, then obviously the ratio could come down, but you need to maintain it more than 1.5 times. Right? So the profit before interest and depreciation, or maybe net profit, and divided by capital and interest. So the debt service cover should be more than 1.5 times. Because these two are very important for us, because we are, as finance professionals, we are very much dependent on these coverage ratios. Like the other ratios are important, but these are very important, because wherever you do, even the existing loan evaluation, you try to compute interest cover and debt service cover. I think I have clear. Any questions? Because the rest of the presentation are not so difficult, but you need to understand these, coverage and leverage and liquidity and efficiency. Profitability is one more to go, but it's straightforward. Any questions so far? Yeah, Gayan is asking a question. When calculating TIE, we take earnings before tax and interest. In DSCR, it's taking the profit before interest depreciation. Why the difference? So why the TI does not before depreciation, and in DSCR, why not before tax? Very good question, Gayan. Now, ideally, if you see that either in computing debt service cover or interest cover calculation, what you have to use is basically the correct equation is earnings before interest, tax, depreciation and amortization divided by interest. Ideally, this is the equation. That is earnings or the profit before interest, tax, depreciation and amortization. Either you compute DSCR or interest cover, both you have to use EBITDA. But in Sri Lankan perspective, actually, we have to take the figure after tax, because generally, if you refer any textbooks, it say even before the tax, before the interest, before depreciation, before amortization. Because amortization and depreciation, because we are taking, this is non-cash. The other two, yes, you have to. But in Sri Lankan perspective, if you see all past papers and all that, but they have take tax payment deducted. After that, only we compute interest and so interest cover and the debt service cover. Because here we presume tax are mandatory, so you need to pay it off. But ideal equation, even tax and the interest to be before that only you take the profit. Then am I answering your question? Ideal scenario, you have to take profit before interest, tax, depreciation, amortization for both interest computations and debt service cover computation. Is it okay? Dan, any further question? Yeah, for exam, yes. For exam, you can use after tax profit for DSCR and interest cover computation. Better you mention the equation and do the computation. But you can deduct interest. Sorry, you can take profit before interest, amortization and depreciation, not the tax, right? So basically profit after tax, but before interest, amortization and depreciation is the figure that you need to get. So amortization is something when you say a machine over a period of time, you depreciate, you provide amount. But when you say land, we do the same scenario, that is amortization. Lands are amortized, machines are depreciated. The same treatment, but two different words. So for exams, yes, you have to use the profit before interest, before depreciation, before amortization, but after tax, because it's a mandatory requirement for the Sri Lankan perspective. Any questions? Gayan, I'm okay. Gayan, in terms of land, we are not getting that type of the requirements for exams, and very rarely we do it in practice also. But in most other countries, we do like some other assets also to some amortizing, like let's say goodwill, so you need to amortize, for example. Like land, again, some kind of what do you call type of appreciations on that, so we will do a kind of amortization. In Sri Lanka, basically what we do, amortize about goodwill and kind of thing, intangible assets, you do in this way, like say R&D development, marketing kind of thing. So those things we will amortize. But for exam purposes, you shouldn't be worried, because we need not to go to that level to do a depreciation or amortization. But in like large organizations, like especially in foreign countries, you can see the amortization of especially goodwill and other type of assets, where not exactly land, but kind of a land development that we are talking about. Generally, you are not taking a land and you do a kind of thing, but if you do a kind of some development on the particular premises, I must say, in terms of intangible, so that could be amortized, right? In Sri Lanka, it's happening, but not we need not to worry about for the exams, right? Generally, for the exams, what we see is we see only depreciation. But what I wanted to show this equation is, in textbook you can see earning before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization. That's what you see, EBITDA or whatever something when foreign textbooks. But here we take operating profit. When you say operating profit, you are not deducting the interest and depreciation, but you deduct tax and then you use that for your computations. Okay. Then we move on. If you do have any further questions, please raise. Thank you very much for Gayan. You're asking a couple of questions that it benefited so many others as well. Right. So profitability ratio, again, not difficult. Here we try to understand, we try to compute some ratios to understand the profitability of the firm, right? How much they are generating as a profit, right? It could be GP, OP, NP margin, and also a return on investment, return on assets, return on equity, also bringing under this umbrella, just to get an idea. Because in terms of ROI, ROE is in terms of investors' perspective, and GP, NP, and OP is in terms of business and bankers' perspective, right? This is not difficult to compute, but good to know those things. So gross profit is basically computing GP divided by turnover or maybe sales, right? So how much the company generate as the gross profit as against the sales. That's what gross profit margin. And when you say net profit is something, net operating income or net profit divided by sales, right? Sorry, operating margin, operating profit is basically operating profit divided by sales. That's what the operating margin. And then lastly, net profit is net profit or net income divided by sales. I mean, very straightforward. But again, I'm telling this is important, because we talk about liquidity, gearing, efficiency, coverage, leverage. I mean, so many things. But in order to be a firm into coverage, leverage, and all that, you need to generate profit also. So then it should be consistency. It should be a kind of a increasing trend. So then only you will make a surplus cash for your cash flows, right? So in terms of profit, you need to know about what is net profit margin, operating profit margin, and GP margin. When you know net profit, operating profit, and GP, and then you can think about how the trends is basically taking place. Again, when you know a firm and when you know across time what are my NP, OP, and GP, then you can compare with the industry. So this is easily we can do. As I was telling about Mariatta's the question. And when you talk about, say, we know the industry OP, you can compare with your firm's OP. Because when you into the paddy, when you are into the tea, when you are into the tourism, you know what exactly the operating profit margins. The NP margin here could be changed because of the interest and whatever financial expenses, how well that you are managing, but OP may not be different to each players in the particular segment. Similarly, GP also. You then think about if the GPs are, changing much, it could be something about learning curve, efficiency, productivity, and kind of investments on machines and all that. So it will clear cut a scenario where the particular guy is operating well in terms of efficiency, right? So when you know this, then you can compare with whatever the other players in the industry. So these are a couple of important ratio where return on assets, income to assets, very important, because in terms of shareholders, investors perspective, they want to know if I put some money here, what is the return that I can get. So in order to take that decision, they look basically what are the ROIs, ROAs, or maybe ROEs. Right, return on equity, return on assets, return on investments, more or less same ROA and ROI. But so they wanted to know what are the ROIs and ROEs. So that's why we sometimes when you go to the AGMs and all that, so we try to compare ROEs among the banking sector. It's like 10%, 12%. We say it's not enough. But see 2022, 23, investors are prefer. What it says is if you put 100, you get a 20 return. That's what the return on equity in terms of investors. When you say ROA, ROI is like what the investment that you put and the return you can get. In banking sector, income to asset is basically something 1 to 1.5 to 2%. It's not so high because we are putting so much of assets in terms of customer deposits and in terms of customer contributions. Because through that you are generating some profit. So sometimes when these days you might be hearing in political talk shows, politicians talk about banks are generating thumping profits. They talk only one line. They talk about 20 billion, 30 billion and all that, but they never talk about assets behind that. So you need to compare with that. When you say 20 billion profit, so everybody sees that 20 billion you are generating, right? But you are not giving maybe concessions and all that. So that's what the public perception. But I was telling you in the beginning also, when you say 20 billion profit, then you have to compare in the industry. Even the comparing the industry not sufficient because it has a clear direct link with asset investment. In order to get the 20 billion, you might have to have 100 billion sort of, or maybe even beyond that as an investment asset. Then you say ROI is this much, ROA is this much, ROE this much. Then people understand. When you say ROE in banks, it's something around 15 to 20%. But there are ROEs better in other manufacturing organizations, maybe 25, 30. So they should be much better than the banks. But when you say bank is making 20 billion, whereas manufacturing from 5 billion, you talk about what is the 5 billion compared to 20, you are making 20 billion profit. But when you come again and you say as per the asset, when you compare with the assets and the equity, it's like, we are in the 15% range. That companies, private companies are making 35, 25. So they are better. So that's why you need to also think about when you talk about ratios and take one part and come in, not good. At many political, views, and they say, you are making pumping profit. You are not, supporting the entrepreneurs at right times, at given times, at these stretch times. But again, the bankers are also like, not in an easy wicket. Like these days, we have excess cash, but nobody to borrow, right? So you can't give money at 1%, 2%, and you can't give money for very like what do you call high risk categories. You need to take them back also, because this is depositors' money, not your own money. So you need to manage the risk also. When central bank, reduce the reserve, then you need not to deposit the money or keep the money in the central bank. Then again, it's with you. So that's why the excess liquidity comes. And then central bank also deducting rates that, so then you can't keep the money again in the central bank. So, I mean, no way. You need to lend it. But then at these difficult times, you need to select the good customers, which is a kind of a challenge. So that's why we are, getting the feeling, the pressure these days also. But, educate others also. I mean, don't take one piece and, take a kind of a whole cake and then eat. That's what our response should be, right? So we are learning ratios, and then we know how to interpret also. Again, not absolute, it will work, but relatively it will work. Compare it, whatever different other parameters, it gives a good understanding and good feedback. Here, ROE, income equity. That's the 10% on this EPI. That is most important tool for maybe an investor, right? So this is not so important, right? Right. So what I wanted to share so far is basically, so we learn several ratios. That is about starting from liquidity, and then we talk about efficiency, coverage, leverage, and finally profitability, right? So very much sort of important perspectives so far we learn. And in terms of exams also very important area, I mean, that we just discussed. So as take home point, as when you're going home, also that you have to do some kind of practice, practice, like test like. So financials, you can't just go through, read it, and go for the exams and write it. So always try to do ratios and memorize these ratios, and do some questions. And when we do past paper questions also, we will further do kind of some more practice or kind of illustrations. But don't wait for that last moment. Start it today, and whenever you have time, and do it. I have shared some kind of worked examples, and also to be done and with the answers. So don't look at the answers first, and go through and see what exactly you have in the offering, right? So then last two ratios about market valuation, because I'm not in the position to compute because we don't have data, but price earning and price book ratio, because price earning is price to earnings per share, and the price book is price to book value per share, because these are sometimes important in terms of investors. If you say in a bank and they see the shares which are listed in the market, and then PE ratio of this much, earnings per share this much, and net book value is this much, so they try to take a kind of a call. They try to take a decision. Let's say if our customer is also a customer in a maybe at a corporate level and listed in the share market, so we can get some idea about the particular firm, whether they do well or not doing well, right? So based on that, so you can interpret the company's position. But this may not be exactly relevant for SME customers, but when customer is into top corporates, yes, we go to the annual reports and we see how well they perform in terms of investors, I mean outsiders. So that gives you a kind of sentiment in order to make a kind of some judgmental call when you are evaluating the customer requirements. So this is again very good. Sometimes that yes, we try to understand, we try to memorize some ratios, but if it not forthcoming, then what you can use these three tools, right, to memorize ratios. Let's say any margin is something divided by sales, OP margin, NP margin, GP margin. So it's something divided by sales. When you say OP margin, OP divided by sales. NP margin, NP divided by sales. GP margin, GP divided by sales. So when you say margin, sales are there. So you can, remember some equations. Turnover. When you say turnover, asset turnover, fixed asset turnover, stock turnover, creditors turnover, and whatever asset turnover is a ratio of sales or variations of sales divided by something. Say stock turnover ratio is something that is cost of sales divided by stocks. Debtors turnover is something sales divided by debtors. Creditors turnover is something sales divided by, cost of sales divided by creditors. So you have already everything, but then you say turnover is sales or extension of sales, variations of sales. Margin is again sales are there. Return on is something, net income is always there, net income or variation of net income divided by something. Return on assets, return on investment, return on equity is net income divided by something. This will not cover everything, but this will cover something. So you might be able to memorize some of the ratios, because sometimes the examiner would ask us to compute the current ratio, quick ratio, this and that. So in a situation, you may not be exactly remember what the equation was. So you can use some of these instructions, these tools, or these bit of ideas in order to memorize easily, so that you can complete your question. Right. These actually I'm not going to discuss in detail, but you can read through financial ratios, and because I started these things at the front also, right? Then these are something about the usage of the financial statement and analysis, because what I wanted to share those things is basically now in a kind of a question in financial statement and analysis. So very important for us to make effort on this, because we can't do this at the last moment, right? Like break even, like working capital, like financials. Yes, you need to do it at upfront and be familiar, and then go to the exams later. But other like microfinancing, SME, introduction, project financing, everything, even at the last moment, you can do some questions and then you can get over with it. But these are a bit different, because if you wait for the last moment, sometimes we might not be able to get a kind of a proper understanding on these concepts, especially the ratio, working capital interpretation, break even, and all that. When we do further past paper questions, you understand, but may not be so easy to do it in a quick intervals. So don't wait for the last moment. Start today as well. And I have shared like 7 attachments including the presentation, which are with lengthy sort of section and some supporting materials. But try to go through as and when possible. If you do have any questions, please bring it for the next week, and so we can discuss with the next session. And since that we have done a kind of number of sessions, it's like advisable that you can get some past papers and start attempting whatever the papers or related questions. And I heard today that still the exams has not been earmarked or planned. Probably maybe take it some time, but don't wait and don't plan for exams right now, but try to get kind of day-to-day stuffs internalized and do practice, because if the exams got further delayed, then probably you might not be planning, you're not studying, you may be waiting until exams dates are set. So then whole our effort may go in vain. So try to do it as much as possible, whatever free days that right now you are having, because when you go to the year end, there may be a lot of other works also, maybe October is a possibility, but we never know what could be the other sort of your working pressure. So start it today and continue. Right? Any questions so far? Nothing? Okay, so then I'm planning to wind up for today. So basically, we discussed about financial statement and ratio analysis as a kind of a topic today. Again, I was telling a bit of important and higher exam weight is there. And the follow-up session could be the forecasting, which I'm planning to do on the session 10, which is for the forecasted financial performance and the positions. So we'll do that as well. Probably next week that we can start with non-financial tool analysis like SWOT, PESTEL, and BCG, and the Porter's 5 process model. Let's see how far that we can proceed. Again, I'm telling, if you do have any questions, yes, please bring it and so discuss during these 2-hour sessions. And having said that, thank you for everybody and have a nice week ahead. Take care.